Welcome to Season 2 of Pack the Rod Podcast, brought to you by the Hoosier Network. I'm your host, Audrey Marr, and I am joined by Carlo Barone and Kylee Corman, as always. Today we do have a special guest from IndianaRivals and our very own women's basketball beat reporter, Kevin Vera. Welcome.
What's up, my beautiful people? It's good to be here. I've been waiting for this. We pushed this one back, but it's good to be here.
It happened. Well, thanks for coming on. Kylee, Carlo, Kevin, how are you doing? It's been a long bye week, but how's everyone doing?
I'm doing pretty solid. I've been at school all day. Didn't get to go to upstairs to see Kendall Jenner.
Oh my gosh, you poor baby.
I didn't want to.
Oh,
I just
want to make fun of the people.
There was a bit of a line.
No.
There was a lot of a line.
I mean, upstairs
we all know Kevin didn't go.
I would have gone if I was of age, but,
It happens.
It happens.
Maybe she'll come back in February.
Yeah, she'll come back in February when I grab her heart and steal it from Bad Bunny.
Benito.
Bro.
All right, well, let's talk about Indiana football. I feel like that was a great transition. Starting us off, even though it happened almost 2 weeks ago at this point. But let's quickly go over Maryland a little bit. It was a very long game, but what is everyone's overall thoughts from the game and what you saw?
I mean, I guess I'll start. It was pretty much it was over before it started type of thing. Maryland came in with one of the best offenses in the country. Good for them too. They started off the year very well, better than expected. They seem to be that third best team in the Big Ten behind Michigan and Penn State. But, Tagovailoa played very well. I mean, when the very first offensive play of your opponent is a 75-yard bomb down the field that leads up to a touchdown, it's going to be a rough day for you. But, it was one of those games where typical Indiana games where the other opponent got off to a really good start offensively. Indiana had to play catch up, and eventually they never did. So it went, everybody kind of expected it going into the week, with a team like Maryland that was riding high on confidence. It wasn't going to be something pretty for Indiana.
I was kind of hoping that we would get to see more of Indiana. I was really hoping they were going to get it together. We've seen bits and pieces of greatness, but not consecutively and not consistent enough. And yeah, that just right off the bat did not happen whatsoever.
I wasn't able to watch the full game. I watched more of the second half, but when I turned the game on, it was over. It was
over in the first 25 seconds.
Yeah, I followed on Twitter throughout the day, but it looked, like Kevin said, it looked over before it really even got going. When you I got a notification on my phone, it was like the Hoosier Network says, the ball is kicked, and 2 minutes later, it's touchdown Terrapins. So I'm like, well, something clearly happened here. So, yeah, it looked rough. I saw someone on Twitter said might have been the worst beatdown, just like what it felt in the Tom Allen era. I mean, he's had some bad losses, but the score doesn't look as bad as what it kind of seems like. But through three quarters, man, 37-3, that's
well,
bad.
Again, no offensive production whatsoever, which ultimately we know resulted in the firing of Walt Bell. But I don't know. I don't even know if Rod Carey is. It's the middle of the season. You can only do so much. But the way that those players looked so beat up and so tired, and at that point, it's still not even halfway through the season. This week will be the halfway point. You can't be looking like that going into week 5.
They got 7 straight weeks of you're traveling or you're playing every single Saturday.
And you're playing Michigan, you're playing Penn State.
Some good teams left.
The easiest part of the schedule is behind you.
Yeah. Well, to your point, to what you said earlier, is we've seen, they've been very minimal, but we've seen bright spots on this Indiana team. And after that Akron game, this kind of was the game that you needed to use to sort of feel better about yourself. Maryland is a reachable opponent. You're not playing a Michigan. They're still a very good team, don't get me wrong, but this was kind of the game that you wanted to go into and sort of feel good about some certain areas, and it kind of went the opposite way. There was a lot of questions. You pulled Jackson late in the game. You kind of gave up on Taven. Obviously, it was a blowout at that point. I think it was 37-3 when Sorsby came in. And, that's waving the white flag a little bit. But with all the quarterback controversy, that's the last thing you want
I
to see.
really disagree with that move.
I don't disagree with it. I get it. I mean, you're in the third quarter, you're down by 30 plus points. Why risk your starter to get out there and be injured?
But that's not why they did it, though. Tom Allen said they did it because they wanted to find a spark. But you already said this is your guy. He's young. These are learning moments. Like, this is your opportunity to, it's all learning. And when you take him out, that's saying we don't really have that much confidence in you.
Those are also in-game reps that he could have used.
Yeah.
I mean, what it looks like kind of almost the whole fourth quarter, it was Sorsby time. But that's another quarter that Taven has against a quality Big Ten opponent. I mean, if he figures it out in the fourth quarter, which, I mean, they weren't on this day, but, I mean, hypothetically, you should leave your guy in. I think with him not really, I mean, this is his fifth game with Indiana, third as a starter. Like, he's still so young. He's still developing. Why not keep him in there? I understand the injury thing, but, I mean.
He's not that great of a caliber at this point in his career that a risk of injury is a reason that you should take him out. He's not J.J. McCarthy. He's not Kyle McCord. He's not Michael Penix, which they never took him out to protect him from injury. But I just don't know.
I would have left him in. I understand why they took him out, but I would have left him in.
I get it. You know what I mean? But I did want to say it took you a whole 4 minutes and 30 seconds to bring up the name Michael Penix, so good for you.
Do you want to bring him up a lot?
Yeah, you do. You do. Well, yeah.
Okay.
No, I was just saying. But anyway.
Yeah, I mean, along with the offensive production, I think another thing was really just the how the defense was able to hold Taulia Tagovailoa. I mean, he had 5 passing touchdowns, 6 total touchdowns, which is obviously a career high. It didn't seem like this was the Indiana defense that we're used to seeing. And again, I feel like, to your point, this is a game that they should have used to be able to really see how things are rolling heading into the rest of the season.
Well, it's tough. You can't also blame the defense too much because you were out there for the majority of the game.
Yeah.
When you go out there and you're playing long drives, it gets tiring. So, I mean, we can sort of, run around in this circle for the next 5 minutes, but it was pretty clear that Indiana just wasn't up to the level of Maryland. And credit to Maryland. They still played very well. They're very
ranked now.
talented team.
Yeah, they're ranked now. So.
I was kind of disappointed in their performance against Ohio State. I thought that would be a little closer.
Yeah.
But the Maryland program is definitely on the ups.
I think, okay, to your point, I was going to say this might be a conversation for another day, but I think people are not giving the respect that Ryan Day deserves, especially to start off the season.
Yes.
They're looking very well.
Yeah.
They're looking very good. Yes, Michigan, looks like the best team in the country right now. In my opinion, it's a little ridiculous that they're not number one right now. But Ryan Day has done a great job, and that Maryland game, that was a fun game to watch. Just kind of see where the Big Ten is at currently, outside of Michigan. But to your point, I think Maryland is a very good team, and same thing can be said about Ohio State.
Mm-hmm. Well, it looked like that 44-17 final was enough for Indiana and their athletic department to take action. As you said, Kylee, Indiana fired their offensive coordinator, Walt Bell. And former IU quality control coach Rod Carey has taken over his responsibilities, including overlooking the quarterbacks. What are you guys thinking about this move? Do you think it's a good thing, bad thing?
Well, whether we like it or not, Allen seems to be all in on it because, I mean, like you have in the plan here, they did pay him a ton of money, not just to be the guy this year. I think it was through next year, too.
Is it 3 years?
Is it?
It's
2 or
2023 to 2025. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So yeah, okay. 2 years plus this one, but I mean, whatever. Like, they're putting a lot of stock in his ability to coach this team. So, I mean, I think it's a little risky that they paid him before they even had one game under him. I think that's a really big, risky move that could really slap the program in the face if they need to get rid of him and Allen eventually as well, if they decide to move in another direction. But it's a risky move, but it's definitely going to be one that needed to happen whether we like it or not. And that's more of not a Rod Carey thing. That's more of the getting a new mind in there. They've been kind of riding this Walt Bell train for a while, and it was a little too long. So putting a new guy in there definitely is something they need to do. And whether we figure out it's Rod Carey's the answer or not, we'll see.
I mean, I was surprised that there was no interim tag on him. I don't know the specific process, how in-depth they went looking for new coordinators. Obviously, this has been a topic of discussion. They had to have talked about it before making that decision. I just really am struggling to believe that Rod Carey is their best option. I think as an interim, sure, you need to get someone in there. But, again, you can't... It's halfway through the season. You're not going to be reinventing the wheel here. You can't really change up too many schemes. You can call different plays. Rod Carey kept saying in his press conference, do what works, don't do what doesn't work, which Walt Bell continuously did what did not work. So there might be a little bit of improvement, but at the end of the day, it's not like this is going to entirely elevate this offense and change everything. There's still going to be challenges. I think, yeah, you wait and see how he handles that, how things improve, and then you can say, okay, you're full-time. Definitely a risk going straight right off the bat. Yeah, he's the guy. Because he wasn't entirely successful at Temple at all. He did okay at, Northern Illinois. Mm-hmm. It's definitely a risk.
I don't know if I would say risk is the right word to use. Here's the way I look at it, is Indiana's obviously struggling on offense for the past couple of years, pretty much since that 2020 season. And so by you just immediately making him your guy, it's fine if you make him the interim. You get it. You're going into week 7. But if you just close that door from the get-go to not even look out at whoever may be available, maybe even in the offseason, you kind of tell yourself as a program, and you kind of tell everybody that's watching the program, that you're content with what's inside, within the program. And obviously, from an offensive standpoint, that hasn't really worked out too well. So that's what's confusing to me, is you don't even take a second to look for further options, because you're saying, okay, yes, Walt Bell is now gone. He was able to do whatever he did with Indiana, but you're telling yourself that you're content with the offensive schemes that are within the program. You're kind of I don't want to say Walt Bell is kind of a scapegoat, but you're kind of using him as just a shadow to sort of delay these problems that you're having. I think it's a bad look on Tom Allen, and it's really one that took me by surprise, because it's not one that I expected from him. He's a guy that Allen, for as much hate that Tom Allen has gotten for the start of this season, I think he's a great person. I think he's a very good coach. But this is one of those moves where I really just lean back and tilt my head, because it's not a good. It just doesn't look good when the second you fire your offensive coordinator, you give it to another guy that hasn't really had much success offensively in past couple years, and you make him the guy. You're sort of waving the white flag a little bit. You're sort of saying, I'm content with what we have here, when clearly
you're not like pushing boundaries.
Exactly. You know what I mean? If I was, let's flip the shoes. If I was, Tom Allen, unfortunately I got to let, one of my guys go, it's how the business works. But if I would want to do whatever possible to get some new blood, some new ideas in the program, you can't expect change. You can't expect positive results when you do nothing to change about it. And that's what Indiana's kind of doing. Yes, it's a new guy, but I mean, he was on the staff. He knows he's
interim coach last year for the offensive line.
Exactly.
He feels like such a filler piece to me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yes, I would agree, but you can't even call him a filler piece, because they gave him that extension and they made him the guy for the next couple years. So it's like, in theory, he should be a filler piece. I think he was pretty much him or Anthony Tucker. I honestly thought it was going to be Tucker who was going to take the OC job. I thought he was going to take it for the rest of the season, but they obviously gave it to Carey. But it's just not a good look for Allen. And I've been trying to say to people, Allen's, this is a hard job to do. Not everybody can come in and coach Indiana football. For as much as people want to criticize the program, it's just not a good look, and that's the last thing Indiana needs right now, because they very well could go. We'll get into it later, but they very well could go winless for the remainder of the season. And if the moments like these stick out, and you have to carry that weight on top of all the losses, it's again. It just, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but it's really just not a good look on Dolson and Tom Allen too, because Dolson has an equal part of the say in this, and those two work very close together. But again, those two are great people, but it's just this move really made me sort of tilt my head and question a lot of what Tom Allen is thinking, sort of as we approach the midpoint of the season. So,
Allen said his reason for that was basically continuity. To be able to go into the offseason. He said, we're recruiting now. We want to be able to tell guys, like, this is your guy. But I feel like that's, with Tom Allen being in the hot seat position that he is, he very well might not even be a factor as early as next year, which I know you got to recruit like you're going to be here for the next 10, 15 years, whatever. But I feel like as a recruit, I would kind of be like, oh, you just kind of threw this guy in this, like, did you look? Did you see what else is out there? I understand it, but I think definitely giving him a little bit, give him the interim for the rest of the season. If he does good, sure, add him on, but I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's something that we have to see. I feel like he's definitely, you all said it, he's been that filler role just like he was last year. But along with the addition, or the Rod Carey taking over that offensive role, Indiana has now added former Virginia Tech head coach Justin Fuente to their staff as an offensive analyst. Well, will this be a good addition to this Indiana offense, do you guys think?
This is still a relatively new move by the Hoosiers, and I'm not going to sit here and act like I know a lot of Justin Fuente's coaching history. He was a head coach at Memphis and Virginia Tech, so he has head coaching experience. I think it's a fine move. You know what I mean? This is sort of what we were just saying a few moments ago, of trying to get new blood into this program and sort of a new offensive mentality, and he might do that. I think it's a fine move, but it's an interesting move, just sort of the timing of it all, and the role that he's going to take.
I think it's another one of those situations where Indiana keeps hiring people that are on going down. They're not moving up in their career. They're their career's kind of sliding down at this point. Walt Bell, what was he, 2-23 at UMass? Something like that. Rod Carey wasn't very successful at Temple. Justin Fuente had to resign at Virginia Tech. Just not much success at the point in their career that they are now entering Indiana. You need to get someone that has momentum, that has these new ideas, that sees things differently. All these guys, I don't want to say their time is running out, but that's kind of how I see it.
It always feels like they're hiring people that got let go somewhere else, if that makes sense. It's hard, but I think adding Fuente is, it can't hurt having a new set of eyes on the program, especially on their offense, which has been a mess the last couple of years. So, promoting Carey and adding him, it's definitely not going to hurt, but you might need more eyes that aren't on the program now to take a look at it then, and then have them talk about their thoughts. A lot of too many guys in-house. Having one guy be an offensive analyst is not going to change much. Maybe on a fourth down that the analytics say go for it, maybe he's voicing in Allen's ear, hey, you should go for it. But it's not like an offensive scheme or a playbook is getting changed. It's hard to say. We really won't know the impact of this move until the end of the year, if they really feel one, to be honest.
Let me say, I do want to throw something out there. I'm curious to see how, obviously he's going to be involved, but I guess how involved he's going to be with the quarterbacks. Fuente is a former Oklahoma quarterback, and he had a couple of good years, and he then transferred over to Murray State. But I'm curious. Obviously, this is going to be an internal conversation. I'm curious how much influence he might have on Jackson and Sorsby, I guess, if we want to throw him into that equation. But that's probably another element that was attractive to both Allen and everybody that had to do with this hiring process. Just sort of getting another quarterback guy, a former quarterback, to sort of help Taven, start to develop and get his ball rolling.
Mm-hmm. Well, with these two now being added to this offensive system, I know, Carlo, you said that we won't really know until the end of the season. But, Kevin, you also mentioned the possibility of Indiana being winless the rest of the season. I mean, how do you think that these additions or moving around in the coaching staff impacts the rest of the schedule, and does it impact it at all?
I would say no. I mean, obviously, I don't want to, obviously, Carey's going to have a big influence now that he's the new OC. But I don't think, assigning two new coaches to your program is, going to make you lose against Wisconsin. You know what I mean? I don't think these are moves that are so catastrophic that, it tilts your season one way or the other. I think it's just a matter of necessity that Indiana needs right now. So that's kind of my stance on it. I mean, they might come out and do something spectacular. They might come out and win every game for the rest of the season. But I just think it's the necessary moves that Indiana had to make. So I don't really think it's going to be anything too more impactful for the remainder of the season.
Part of it is you have to have your fans happy. You have to have investors, stakeholders. You got to have people happy. Is anyone ever going to be happy with an Indiana football team? Probably not. But everyone has been calling for change, so whatever. At least you can make the change. Mm-hmm. They can only get better. They really can't get too much worse. They've got a tough schedule coming up. No one's really expecting too much out of them, so it is what it is at this point.
It's hard to say what their season outlook is going to be, considering, being honest here, two of those games are against Michigan and Penn State. You could hire Tom Brady as your offensive coach, and I still think you're going in there and getting smacked, to be honest. But even Wisconsin's a quality team. Rutgers is quality. Illinois is not good. Purdue's not very good. Michigan State's not very good. But, two of those games are on the road. So, do I think that really changes a ton? No. But like I said, we really won't know the impact until after the season. But, they need, I think, hiring more than one guy is going to be the way they get out of this offensive slump, because it's a couple of years running now, and I don't really see any huge changes coming, considering they hired an in-house guy to basically run their stuff. So, to me, honestly, that move feels more like Allen proving, I guess, that his system works. It doesn't. It hasn't on the field so far, but that's more him, I feel like, being confident in what he's doing. But I really don't understand that, because this team has been god awful the last 2 years. So it's a hard move, but we really won't know this full story until the year's over.
Well, and they've had a bad offense the last few years. A coaching change, like I said earlier, it's not going to change the entire scheme halfway through the season. So I think they just needed a new face, and I think you're absolutely right that Tom Allen it's his guy. He's said it a million times, giving him all the praise in the world. So I think you hit the nail right on the head there.
Mm-hmm. Well, this kind of goes along with that. This has obviously been a massive bye week for Indiana, which it seems to be a theme, because wasn't it last bye week that they moved Rod Carey to taking over the O-line? So
I think so.
Yeah, it seems to be a theme for Indiana. But with this bye week, do you think that we will see any improvement from Indiana? Obviously this will be a hard game with Michigan, but will we see any improvement on both sides of the ball for the team, do you think?
Maybe not improvement, but it'll be interesting to see if any major switches happen, or maybe on the offensive line, or even the defensive backfield. It'll be interesting. It'll be hard to look at until the game and see where people line up. But I expect a few maybe switches. I couldn't really tell you what, but I mean, they're evaluating everything always. They're the most evaluated team of all time, clearly. So I would expect a move, because if they don't, then like what has changed? Nothing.
I think Allen said they're going to be getting a few guys back. He didn't say who, like from the injury report, whatever. But I think it's a good chance for them to rest their bodies up. I mean, the defense has been getting absolutely crushed. No break on the field. They're on the field 24/7. So I think it's a chance to rest and get a little bit of recovery in. But again, right off the bat, you're playing Michigan, the number 2 team in the nation. You're going to get physically beat up, and then you still have 7 weeks. So if you're already this beat up and tired after 5 weeks, like I said, you're going to have a really rough rest of the season. But coming off the first few games off the bye week, maybe that will help them. Just being a little bit more rested, a little bit healthier.
I think it's a little unrealistic to sort of expect any improvement. I mean, regardless of who you bring in, you know, it's hard to amass your influence on a whole football program and a whole scheme when you've really had 5-6 days to work with your guys. You know, I don't expect Carey to go out there and call the best game ever. I don't expect that at all. What I am going to be looking for on Saturday is the plays they're going to try to create. Who are you going to use as your playmakers? We were told that Donovan McCulley is probably going to have a lot more influence on this offense. How comfortable is Jackson going to be? Are we going to still see some design runs on his end? Who's going to take over that role in the backfield? Is it going to be Lucas? Is it going to be Turner? There's just a lot of questions because you're coming off the bye, because you just fired your offensive coordinator. I think it's a little unrealistic to just expect a sort of a new rebirth on this offense. It's going to take some time. It might even take up to the end of the season. But, you know, I think for this game, the key that, you know, everybody just kind of has to see is what are the pieces that are going to be moving for Indiana, because in 2 or 3 weeks, now you have some time under your belt. Those are the pieces that, in theory, should be, you know, a big part of your offensive scoring.
Yeah, well, a big part of this Michigan team, and obviously a name that anybody has heard of, is J.J. McCarthy. I mean, he has 11 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and almost 1,300 yards total. Is this defense going to be able to manage Michigan's offense, or how do you think it's going to turn out?
He also has not taken a snap in the fourth quarter. I was going to say that,
yep.
I mean, that says it all.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Indiana's inventing the wheel on their defensive scheme any week with what they have around them. But I think it'll be interesting how they try to stop it. But J.J. McCarthy, I mean, that Michigan offense, Blake Corum, they're just unbelievable. When you have a tandem like that, I mean, experienced coach in Jim Harbaugh, they have the experience in the college football playoff. I mean, it's a season for them to remember. I find it hard for Indiana to walk out of this stadium and be happy with the scoreboard or how they played. It's the truth of it. They're the number 2 team for a reason. Like Kevin mentioned, they probably should be number 1 because they've looked better than Georgia.
They should be number 1. They very well should be number 1.
I think they've looked better than Georgia. I would agree, but they look like. Honestly, I'm happy I'm going to see them play because they might win the national championship this year. And to work a game against them, would be really cool, to be honest. But I don't think Indiana has much of a chance. It'll be interesting to see how long they last. I will say they did go toe-to-toe with them for a half last year. So it's not out of the question, but I think this team is a lot better than they were. Michigan is a lot better this year than they are last year.
I agree. Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. I mean, I think Allen said it word for word. They're playing as good as anybody in the country. And I think this is the most dominant, at least 6 weeks in, the most dominant team we've seen in the past couple of years. I mean, that Georgia defense, these past couple of national championship Georgia teams have been great. Obviously, they won it all for a reason, but they weren't as balanced as this Michigan team seems to be. Georgia, when you watch them, they were all about defense, right? And Michigan just does everything so well. They're just it's truly impressive what Harbaugh's been able to do, especially with the way the season was sort of looking to start out for this program with his suspension and that whole fiasco that was going on over there. But with a strong offensive line, J.J. McCarthy seems to have the confidence back from this fan base. This defense, I saw a stat earlier today that the Michigan defense, I might get this a little bit wrong and I forget who said it, but the Michigan defense has yet to allow anybody inside their own 10. So that's like
all year.
That's all year. Something I'll find it eventually. But it's some crazy stat like that, and it just goes to show how well this Michigan team is playing. And I got to look back at the preseason rankings to see where they were sort of aimed to be at. But I think they are, they're just a great football team. And I actually found the stat. It's by Max Olson. It says the University of Michigan has played 313 plays on defense over its first 6 games. Not once have they defended a first and goal. Nobody has managed to run a play inside their own 10.
Crazy.
That's Max Olson, senior writer for The Athletic. So.
Well, even if they do somehow come across a situation where they do have to defend a first and goal, Indiana hasn't been able to do anything with that. So they're probably still okay there.
They're just they just got it all working for themselves right now.
They really do.
Right now is there really a favorite to win the national championship besides Michigan? That Georgia defense has looked it's obvious that defense was not going to be as good as the past couple of years because they lost all those pieces to the draft and they've looked a little bit shaky defending the run. But this Michigan team they're as good as they come. I think down the road in January, February, they're going to be very happy with how they turned the season around.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of unanswered questions with how this game is going to go. But if you guys had to pick off the top of your head, who do you think is going to stand out for this Indiana team on Saturday, if there is anybody?
I like the way you put that question. If there is anybody, I'll go with Christian Turner. I mean, Turner was a very good pickup from the transfer portal, making his way over from Wake Forest. Indiana has talked about how they've wanted to incorporate the run a little bit more. It started off fine to begin the season. I think you used Henderson a fair amount. I thought you used him well enough. Obviously, it's a big blow for him to miss the next couple weeks of the season. But again, this goes back to the whole Walt Bell conversation. Jalen Lucas wasn't being used as much as you want him to be used in that sort of role. He was still, being looked at as just a return guy. But Christian Turner is out of him and Lucas, he's the more similar to Henderson. And 6 games into the season, it seems like Henderson was going to be their number 1 back. Again, that's a very big loss for this Indiana team because Henderson's a quality running back. He's a very experienced running back. But with Turner, I think they have a very good chance to sort of use that dual threat. He's more of a running back. He can catch the ball a little bit, but I'm excited to see how he's going to be incorporated into the offense. Just because you're out with Henderson. Lucas you haven't used Lucas as, a main running back. That leaves you to Turner, and to have a good offense, you got to run the ball well. So
I think if you have to pick someone, I guess, they said they wanted to include Donovan McCulley more, so I'd like to see what they do with that. I feel like that's a decent shot of having a good performance.
Mm-hmm.
I think if anything, J.J. McCarthy hasn't done a lot of mistakes this year, really at all. If Philip Dunham can get an interception, that would be... it'd be crazy for him, and be.
I like that pick. I very much like that pick. That's a good pick.
It would be crazy for them, but also the fact that they could get a turnover on Michigan is. This sounds bad, but it's impressive because he doesn't make a lot of mistakes, and we've seen Dunham have a knack for the ball. I mean, he's got 3 picks on the year. He leads the team, so
their secondary has played surprisingly well.
Yeah,
for how inexperienced they were coming into the season, and the pieces that Indiana lost in the offseason, they've all played really well. Kobe Minor has also played well.
Mm-hmm.
I almost picked him.
Yeah, I mean that secondary, they might get lit up this weekend, but they've played well. I really like how that secondary has kind of come along. And let me also throw out there Aaron Casey. Casey's had a good start to the year.
He's quietly had a great year.
Yeah, you know, he's
one of the best I would say one of the best run stoppers in the conference.
I think
he's playing well.
God, I saw this earlier. I don't remember what the number was, but he was up there in the Big Ten, 5 or 7, maybe.
For
tackles.
I don't remember.
Just 5 or 7.
5 or 7.
Up there in the Big Ten for 5 or 7.
I'm spaced out over here.
No, but I think
he was ranked for something.
Ranked for something. There we go. Tweet that one out.
First time he's been ranked.
I will.
But I'm intrigued to see how well this defense is gonna pair up against Michigan, just because the few bright spots that Indiana's had on this team has come from the defensive side of the ball. So Casey, Minor, Philip Dunham, all those guys could very well have a Noah Pierre also.
Mm-hmm.
Still.
He was the best performer on the defense. Well, statistically, he was the best performer on the defense with 7 total tackles.
He's number 2 for
Maryland.
Tackles for loss. Sorry.
There we go.
There we go. We got the number. But Noah Pierre had his best game statistically against Maryland. And I mean, what shocked me was Aaron Casey was pretty low on that remark. He had 2 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, which he's usually up there in like the 10 total tackles. But I think for my pick, I think this is a big indicator is what the availability report will be, because in a lot of these reports, a lot of these star players have been either questionable or out. I mean, McCauley was questionable last week, but he obviously played. I was between McCauley and Camper for this week, but I think I'm going to go with Camper because, I mean, we didn't see him against Maryland at all. But I think Tom Allen was saying this week.
He was banged up, yeah.
Yeah, he was banged up, and he's been having a good week. So I think this could be a game that he definitely shows up when it's needed as well. But closing us out, let's get some final score predictions.
I think this is going to be a tough game for Indiana. If I'm Jim Harbaugh, there's 2 people that I'm absolutely playing this week. First of all, I know you got to get J.J. McCarthy's numbers up, but why don't you just start Jack Tuttle? A little revenge
Are we going to
tour.
see Jack Tuttle?
And the other player is the long snapper that they didn't play last week because they played 73 out of their 74 players.
Jeez.
And the long snapper was the only one that they did not play. So I think you play those 2 guys.
Did they punt the ball, or did he not play just because they didn't throw him out there?
I think they just didn't throw him out there.
Come on,
Okay.
Jim. You got to throw him out there.
Yeah, you just
Come
gotta throw him
on,
out there.
man. You got to do that.
So that's what I think should happen. Again, I know you got to get J.J. McCarthy's numbers up. And, if things get out of hand, you can throw them in. Willing to bet they're not going to get out of hand, though. My final score prediction is 54-3.
To 3?
Yeah.
Ouch.
I
think they'll get a touchdown late in the fourth.
I was thinking about a shutout.
I mean, what do you have, Carlo?
See, I was gonna say something to 3-2, but you brought up a good point with they might get something late. I don't think they'll score. I don't think they'll score until the second half, to be honest. I'm gonna go 49-8.
Eight?
They get that 2-point conversion.
They get that 2-point conversion for sure.
No, you know
It's not
what?
gonna
They
matter.
miss an extra point and then they get a safety. How about that? Just to make things interesting.
49-8.
I'll go 52-10. I'm a little surprised, honestly, that the over and under is just 46.5. Spread seems to be about right. I mean, 33.5. Yeah, I mean, sure, but Vegas hasn't seen this team week in and week out as we have. So 52-10, I think Indiana will, probably get a field goal like they have in this season in the first couple drives. And then, as the game closes out in that fourth quarter, they'll get a lazy touchdown on, in the final 2 minutes or so. But yeah, 52-10, the Michigan Wolverines improved to 7-0.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you, Kevin. I'm going to go with 45-10. I do think that they do get an offensive touchdown late in the game. We'll see how this all goes, but yeah. So thank you for tuning into this week's episode of Pack the Rod Podcast. Kevin, thank you for coming on. Happy you were able to join us. This was a great episode. I've been Audrey Marr, joined alongside Carlo Barone and Kylee Corman. Make sure to keep up with the Hoosier Network on social media for all IU football updates, and we'll be making a road trip up to Ann Arbor.
Yeah, we're taking a pit stop to the region, and Kevin gets to go to the region for the first time.
Exactly.
Are you excited?
Very excited. I've heard a lot about the so-called region, as in Valparaiso, Indiana. I've never been. I've actually never been to. Actually, no, I have been to Ann Arbor. I went last year for basketball, but never been to the big house. But I get to say hi to Carlo's parents.
Let's go.
Kylie's parents, hopefully. Hey, Kim. It's gonna be a good time. So hopefully,
Are there any stops that we need to make? You can't go to Duffy's.
We're
with
getting
us.
wings though.
I know.
We'll get you some wings to go.
Can't go to Duffy's. I've heard a lot about this place.
Duffy's wings. Trust.
What's like the local restaurant in Valparaiso?
Well, it depends what you're looking for.
There's
if you
a
want,
lot of
okay, give me like
options.
3.
Okay, well, if you're looking for something nicer, you probably want to go to Stacks. They've got a nice rooftop. They've got a downstairs restaurant that's pretty good.
Stacks is solid.
What
I
else?
love Blockheads. Have you been there?
No.
It's good.
Never.
It's like Asian fusion. Their sushi's really good.
No, I've not.
It's where Function Brewing used to be.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then I don't know what a good third restaurant. The food here is just better. The food there is just better than here. I'll give it that. But some Mexican.
That's a whole nother
You're making
debate.
Valparaiso sound like it's the
nice.
5-star culinary part of America.
We've talked about it on here a million times. I have beef with the food down here. I don't know.
Here? Like as in
Bloomington, yeah.
I got no
Why?
beef.
Yeah,
I just
why?
don't
I
think
actually
it's
just
that
bought some
good.
beef today, but
What's your favorite restaurant in town?
I don't have one.
We're keeping this going. This is we gotta figure
I
this
don't have
out.
one.
You don't have
I
one?
don't have one.
No.
it's not even the place you work at.
I work there. So no.
What?
You're not repping the brand well.
Do you like Lincoln Flats? You didn't bring up
Yeah.
Lincoln Flats when we were talking about best restaurants.
Yeah, I worked there for 2.5 years. I like it. I had some great coworkers too. My twin brother.
We know you did. We know you did, Carlo.
I know. I met some great people there.
I'm still waiting for an answer, Kylie.
I don't have a favorite restaurant here.
Okay.
What about you, Kevin? What's your favorite restaurant?
My favorite restaurant? That's a good question. That's a good question. Mother Bears is sort of a,
come on.
okay,
That's
let
like
me
that's
finish. Let me
straight up
finish. Let me
stomach
finish.
hurt.
Get in the
There
butt
is
down.
nothing better than after a long day going with either your family or a group of friends, like late night at Mother Bears and just
Is that
sitting
what we're
down
doing
and eating
tonight?
a pizza.
We're going to go to
Tonight?
Mother Bears after you
Tonight.
get the lift in.
I'm going to Kilroy's.
I'm going to the
They're
beautiful
open later.
SRC. I'll go. Mother Bears is definitely a great option. What else? What else is good?
Exactly.
Malibu Grill is pretty good.
Guys, what did we talk about like 2 weeks ago on this podcast?
Did you guys talk about that too?
much.
What did you guys talk about?
Zagreb's is easily the best restaurant here. I don't know why.
I've never
I have to
been.
explain
I've never
this
been.
again.
I've never been.
I've never
been.
been,
I
and
just-
there's
I
not
don't
a
get
single thing on that menu that I would eat. So I'm done talking
I
about
don't
it.
get how I have to explain this. Like it's
I just told you I've never been, so explain
like
it.
no, but we just talked about that.
Let me explain it to you. We can't all afford it.
Okay, I understand that, but I was more saying we just talked about this. I don't know why when we think of best restaurants in Bloomington, that's not one of the first ones we think.
Because we never ate there.
Okay, have you gone there?
No, I've never
Kevin,
eaten
have you
there.
gone there? Okay,
He
I
just said he
I just
didn't.
said like 5 times I've never been there.
Never
oh,
eaten
then I mean I'm gonna be honest. Like y'all should go. I understand. I understand. It's a lot of money. I'm not gonna cap. It is 100%, but it's worth it.
All right.
Quick shout out to Hinkles too. I've never been, but I've heard
Oh my
Hinkles
gosh,
is really
been.
good.
you should.
I want to
The
go.
hours are terrible.
The
though.
hours
my
are
gosh. They're like
Please,
10 a.m.
If people from
to,
Hinkles
like,
are listening, make the hours
like
a little better
twice
for us.
I don't know.
students.
Their hours are
They're
awful.
not open on Sundays or
you
Mondays,
just gotta
right?
know.
Or
You gotta
Saturdays,
know when they're
something like
open.
that.
If you look
Where
up when
is
they're open,
that?
it's not right.
It's
It's like by.
it's at the end.
You know where that car went in the cemetery in Bloomington like last week?
Hold on.
Yeah, I
It's
do.
Hughes
Right around
Streets,
there.
Hughes Streets. It's like at the very end of Kirkwood.
By the
Like,
Dillon.
Pretty much.
Yes.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
You
Quarters.
you
Okay,
take a-
yeah.
You know, at the end of Kirkwood, the light.
Yeah.
You take a left.
Like that antique place?
No, I don't know.
It's
But-
like a tool place. I don't know. Doesn't matter.
Yes. It's like
Okay.
it's like a little shack. Well, you take a left there, and literally Hinkles is right there.
It is
First
so
move
good.
on the hand side.
It is so
Okay.
good, but
It's
they're
also
never
cheap, too.
open. They're never open.
They're never open, but
Open more. Okay.
Let's see. I'm looking at the hours right now.
No, don't believe
Okay,
them. I
okay.
promise you.
we got to wrap this one up. We went from Indiana Hoosiers to Jack Total and Taven Jackson to Hinkles Hamburgers. So that should be it. Yeah.
We should. This is just the football and food podcast now, but that was a great way to close this out. But as we started this conversation out, we will be heading to Ann Arbor to the Big House on Saturday for all you need to know. So make sure to stay tuned for more content, and we will see you next week.